NRL fantasy halves, it looks pretty similar for most teams, but we've got a couple of different controversial options to talk about here. Welcome back, Biz. I'm going to throw to you. We're going to test straight in. Who's your number one half in fantasy this year?
Every time I pick a team and clear it, it's Nathan Cleary who goes in as my number one. I
Yep.
pick him; he's my first pick, and he's captain. And then I pick my second player. So I don't know. Look, maybe if you've never played fantasy before, you're new to the NRL. He's by far the number one fantasy player in the league. You could argue it was Hines in previous years, but Hines no longer dominates the playmaking as he previously had.
Yep.
Cleary has lost arguably one of the best sixes in the game to probably start with a rookie or close to a rookie, where he could step up even more. Look, the stats are a waste, but I'll read them out anyway. So, price at 65, he averaged 70 in 2024 when he played 70 plus minutes. Obviously, subtracting out his injuries, 76 in 2023, 67 in 2022, 91 in 2021. That's ridiculous. Like, I think he had like 3 out of 4 games 100 plus at one stage, and then 72 in 2020. Look, even if he's priced 65 and he gives you 65, you're capturing him every week.
Yep.
Most people will capture him in week one in Vegas. I know that I said there was nothing to say and I said a lot, but just get in.
Absolutely. Must have. I'm completely with you there. First picked in my team, captain. I love to look for another option, but I don't think there really is one this year. If you do want to go against Cleary, all you're betting on there is injury. That's really all that can go wrong for Cleary. Other than that, he's rock solid. But if you do want to do that, you go Isaiah Yeo instead as another safe captain. So,
I did see a crazy comment. No,
yep.
this was on the Pan. Sometimes I research how teams are training,
Okay.
and there was a thread in the Panthers forums. I forgot what it was called, but there was one commenter who said that they should move Cleary to 6.
Ooh.
Have Blaze at 7 and let him run the team to give him experience. And that was crazy to me. But if you believe in that, there's a potential knock.
You are
Will it
reaching
happen?
so
Probably not.
far into
I'm
the
not
bag
reaching.
here.
I just go into every team's
Yeah.
forums and I read what people think their best 17 will be and why, and who's training well, who's training not. I saw that, so I thought I'd bring it up.
I mean, you could make a case for Schneider maybe doing that, but yeah, Blaze is not a 7. We
Blaze
saw
with
it at Parramatta
7.
last year. He's
Yeah.
that I'm not even going to reply to that.
Shout out to the guy who made that comment. I might post it in the comments below, link it, because
Yeah.
people probably don't believe me right now, but I swear it was said.
Oh, the fan Facebook groups are hilarious, man. Like, I'm in so many of those. There's some iconic comments, but yeah, Cleary, got to have him at a discount. I think he's a 70 plus average this year, price 65, so that's super easy. Metcalf is number 2, and he's both of our number 2, I believe, there
Yep.
too. So
Yep.
yeah, for Metcalf, priced at a 33. Historical average isn't the best there. It's a 38.5, but you look at that historical average, it only includes 42 kick meters a game. So we're seeing him step into a more dominant 7 role. And what we've seen in the preseason is 366 kick meters and then 69 kick meters in a game where he got a 40-20 as well. So not fully convincing, but enough to tell me that I think he's going to be in that sort of low 40s area, especially if he's the goal kicker too. So you're getting 10 points of value from a guy who also has some pretty big attacking upside in a Warriors side that has a pretty good forward pack and some backs there who are sort of stepping up to, your Ali Tower types, a bunch of other guys there as well. So Metcalf is a guy that you pretty much have to have in your team at 441k. Anything else to add there?
No, I think he's passing the eye test. I think they trialed him at 7 with Timam. I think in the second trial that he kind of took a bit more of a backseat and TMM took more of a role, but I think he's actually kicked a 40-20 in both games. And he's just been one of the best players in the preseason overall. So, look, kicking goals, really historically a running half.
Yeah.
So if you add the running half to the game manager half, you should a guy who could potentially average 45 plus and 50 plus. To be frank, if Warriors play well,
Okay.
Because he has the categories to do all this. So, Look, am I saying he'll average 50 plus? No, but look, if the Warriors are randomly top 4 again, then maybe.
Yeah. See, I see him as an Isaiah Katoa last year with a better running game, like stat profile. That's how I'm looking at it.
But isn't that going from low 40s to a high 40s, 50?
I think Katoa was in that low 40s area. So
yeah, he was like 42 to 44.
Yeah, so you beef it up, maybe
slightly
mid-40s.
better, 46 to 48.
Injury risk is there though. It's worth noting.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and they have halves. They've got CHT, TMM,
Yep.
like the Jet Cleary as well. So he's probably far off, but
Mm.
they got some options. But look, our number three unanimous as well, Sandon Smith. I think look, he didn't play that well in the preseason game from a fantasy perspective, but kicking goals, base price, starting average is 39 when he's only kicking for about 220 kick meters a game, splitting with the halves he's played with. Look, do I think it's a home run? I don't think so. I think like Mamazelis, it's just one of those things like don't overthink it. Like, even if he doesn't score that well, he's in a team that historically gives you good fantasy scorers, and also just at his price, like there's no real downside. Like the
Yeah.
worst thing you do is you overthink it and you don't get it on him, and he cracks out a 50 week one or even a 40, and you're
Mm.
chasing the money, you're wasting trades. So just better off start with him, and if he fails, then trade him out like everyone else.
Yep, with you there. That 39 historical average starting in the halves is with 227 kick meters as well. So it's not an insanely dominant, half position. He's next to Chad Townsend, who is a guy who steers the ship, but he's not totally dominant when it comes to stats. So I agree with you. 250K, don't get scared by that trial game. Easy play. I'll jump to my number 4 spot, and I've got Cameron Munster in this position. He's an interesting one there. So priced at a 44, but historical averages are really strong. So let's roll back here. 2024, when he played big minutes, it was a 50 average. 2023, it was a 55 average. 2022, it was a 62 average. And then it was 60 in 2021. So the data going back is sort of pointing to that 55-60 area where he's a premier half in the game. He's one of the better players in the game too, which is exciting. But the downside here is you've got that injury he's carrying into round 1. That's kind of mitigated by the fact that we've seen him named for a trial game. So that makes me feel a bit more confident. But outside of that, Jerome Hughes, we've seen him take over. If he stays in that super dominant half role, we could see Munster take a bit of a back seat and score a bit more like Jerome Luai, which wasn't as strong when he was playing next to a dominant half like Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, I love Munster. I'm not. He's not in my top 5 solely because he's got the bye round 2.
Yep.
So I think I'll be targeting him in week 3. Like, how much money is he really going to make week 1? Like maybe 30, 40K max. I'm happy to wait and see how it goes. I think the fact that now he's playing this, he's named in preseason, makes it an easier assessment. The one thing, without seeing him on the field, the thing with the groin is that with a player who's that crucial to your team and a guy next to him, Jerome Hughes, who's so good, naturally I would just be like, okay, well, you don't have to kick for 300 meters a game. So Jerome can handle the bulk of the kicking. So if it's just solely off the running, I think he averages 50. If he kicks a lot, I think it goes back up to 55, 60. But he's priced at 44, so it's not a huge upside on that. So look, if he comes out in the preseason and he takes 50% of the kicks, then look, I'll probably just start him. But what I do love about him is in the finals series last year, he averaged about 60 plus, and that was on the back of running for 200 meters a game in all the finals games. He really stepped it up. He asked for the ball a lot. He demanded the ball in a lot of positions, so he's still clearly a very good scorer. If he didn't have the bye round 2, he would definitely be in my top 5. But as it all, he's not.
That's the thing to look at there. Who's your number 4?
I've got Mr. Lockie Galvin at number
Ooh.
4. I hyped him up in some of our other preseason videos. What I like to see is that he was amazing in the trial game last week.
Yep.
He took 95% of the kicking. I know he wasn't playing next to Luai, but I think what a lot of people were thinking is that Luai will come in and take on the Cleary role and take 95% of the kicks, and Galvin's just the running guy. I don't think so. I think Galvin averaged low 50s last year on the back of 150 kick meters a game. I actually think it's going to be more like 250, 250 split between him and Luai, or maybe 300, 250. So I think there's upside to Galvin. I love the pod, and I love a rising kind of half who's still bloody young, and no one's going to really have him.
Yep.
So I think he's a lot better chance at scoring in the 55 range than Munster, just based off his injury profile at the start. I think Munster will average more than him by the end of the season, but I think if I'm looking at a short-term first 5 rounds, like I definitely think, especially if you factor in the bye, I think over the first 5 rounds, Galvin handsomely outscores Munster.
Absolute super pod there. And it's a bit controversial because I'm going with his halves partner in my fifth spot, Jerome Luai. So, yep, agree with everything you've said about Galvin. But I think also Galvin's a nice guy to play next to for halves. So I'm going to point out a few stats here. First one, Jaden Sullivan. When he played next to Galvin last year, he had 4 games. He averaged 60 points. Now, his historical average across his career playing in the halves is 34.6. So we saw a massive increase in points for Sullivan. He had a few more kick meters, that kind of thing. Probably not going to be like that this year as much, but he also had plenty of attacking opportunities because I believe Galvin takes a bit of attention from the defense. So there's things that open up there. In terms of Luai, priced at the 44, and we look at his numbers next to Cleary. So across the years, what we've seen is a really clear increase in kick meters when Cleary's been out for Luai, and that's reflected in the stats. So 2022, when he played without Cleary, he averaged a 41 on 84 kick meters. In 2023, when he played without Cleary, that jumped from 41 to 49, and the kick meters jumped from 84 to 156. And then last year, we saw those kick meters jump from 156 to 332, and we saw the points jump from a 49 to a 51. So we're seeing this increase in progression in Luai, who's a pretty young guy still, I might add, and seeing him taking on more and more responsibility when it comes to kicking when he's playing without Cleary. So the case I'm making here is less that he'll be completely dominant. I don't think he's going to be a completely dominant half. It's more that I think he's going to have to do a lot in attack, a lot with his legs. He's going to score a lot of points like that. But also, he'll be able to earn himself a pretty strong base of kick meters around that sort of 300 kick meters mark there. So, priced at a 44, should be a guy who floats into the low 50s. It's a bit dicey, and with Munster and Luai, I think you've got to pick one or the other. You really can't take both, and they're both propositions that are a bit dicey for different reasons.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with the analysis. I think the other thing with Luai is I'd love to just see him prove his haters wrong and just take him. I think so many people said he couldn't play as a 7, and he took that on and just dominated for Penrith as a 7. And I want him to show that he'll do that again at the Tigers. Like, I think the knockers are still saying, like, who doesn't dominate at Penrith, right, as a 7.
Yep.
So I'd love him to show that at the Tigers. So I think that's a great pick. My number 5 is actually old boy Daly Cherry Evans. I know that he's right now owned by 2.13%. He's coming off a very down year for him, where he averaged 53, which is incredible to think about, that a 53 is a down year. But let me tell you, his average in 2023 was 64. His average in 2022 was 59. And his average in 2021 was 68. Okay. So if you're talking about bounce backs, and I know Cherry Evans is a lot older than Munster, but he doesn't look washed. He still played well last year. He seems to be one of those kind of guys who really takes care of his body. He's really serious about conditioning. He very durable, barely misses a game. People are going to say Luke Brooks obviously came as a 6 and is taking on more. Well, he's played next to Foran and done really well before. He's played next to Trent Hodkinson and done really well before. So I actually don't think Brooks was doing that much more than you would expect. And to illustrate that, if you look at his kick meters in 2024, he still averaged 411. So that's still a lot of kick meters, which is only 50 less than his 460 in 2023. So he's lost 1.5 points or 2 points there, but his average has fallen by 10. Now, I think it's pretty close to a swan song year for DC. I think Manly have a good chance of being one of the better teams this year. I think they're on the way up. And I'll read out to you his run of games to start the year, which I think 5 out of 7 of his first games are at Brookvale. So Cowboys, Warriors, Canberra, Parramatta. All games that aren't going to be won on defence. And then you've got Melbourne, Cronulla, St. George, and then Penrith before the bye. So you've got, I guess, Melbourne, Penrith, and Cronulla towards the back end of that run. But he could start really hot, and he's the type of guy who can score 100 plus. So, look, no one's talking about Cherry Evans, but I've got a soft spot for him. I don't particularly love him as a player on the field, or off the field, but I love him as a fantasy prospect because I've owned him many times, and he's always done well for me. I think this year with 2% ownership, he could be a great pod for your team. Look, I don't know. I don't think I can fit him in just because the first three options are so clear cut. But I would have loved to fit him in.
Yeah, I mean, you've made a great case. I haven't really thought about Cherry Evans, if I'm being completely transparent. And everything you've said there is correct. The bounce back makes sense. It's similar to your Damien Cook case. So I think we both lean towards historical pedigree a bit more than most people do. And Cherry's rewarded you in the past. So, you're definitely leaning that way. I've seen a lot of people talking about, Turbo as a great option, Garrick as a great option, even Leo Hapawadi as a great option on the back of the fact that Manly will be good this year. That should extend to Cherry Evans 100%. So,
Definitely.
case makes sense. It would be a super pod. And like you said, he can go nuclear at the right time. So I'm not against that at all. I just think guys like Munster, Luai are probably a bit too much value. And if I'm going to fit that extra
Yeah.
half in, that's where I'm going. But if you're
Yeah.
sitting at home and you want a pod, Cherry Evans, he won't let you down. Like, he's not going to average below 52 or whatever he's priced at. He's not going to go below that. So
No.
worst case scenario, you get what you paid for. Best case scenario, you get an absolute monster in the halves.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, look, if Cleary didn't make to the start of the season after his shoulder
Yep.
surgery, then I think I just would take out Cleary and put Cherry Evans there as a super sturdy guy who I can rely on. I think
Yep.
Hines is probably overvalued this year because of how good Trindle's been.
Yeah.
But I think Cherry Evans can be that elite tier with a lot less downside. So if Cleary didn't make it back for round one, then and if he's not named for round one for whatever reason, then I think I slot Cherry Evans in there.
Yeah, Hines is out 100%. I'll throw in a few other mentions. Moses is going to lose the goal kicking, so I'm not a fan of that. Fogarty could be some value. Historically, he has had runs where he's averaged 60, so you can make a case for him. We talked about Matt Burton in the past. It's not a clear-cut case, but he could potentially develop into more points this year as well. And then outside of that, I mean, is there anyone else you want to throw in here?
I mean, he probably goes to number one if he's picked, but Thomas Duffy, maybe
Oh,
number
yeah,
two,
yeah.
just
Yep.
because Cleary's. I mean, we didn't talk about Duffy because it's still he's named at 7 this week,
Mhm.
but Clifford's not available, so
Mm.
who really knows? Reports are kind of getting hotter and hotter,
Yep.
but if Thomas Duffy's there, I think he's a must-have.
Yep.
If he's named to week one, and even if you're not sure if Clifford's coming back week two, I think you just run him, and if he
Yeah.
impresses, he impresses. But until he's probably the number two, but until he's actually firming for a role, then we not worth mentioning yet.
Yeah, it's a good shout. So right now he is in my team. He's
Yeah,
not quite in my 17, but I would have him in the 17 over Royce Hunt, over Nolani Tuase, over these sorts of guys, because he's a starting half who goal kicks. In terms of who we have this year, I think it's pretty straightforward. So from my side, I have cleared out Munster and Luai to make space for more forwards. So I've just got Nathan Cleary, Luke Metcalf, Sandon Smith, and then I've got Duffy down the bottom.
that's exactly my composition, and I can't see that changing
Yep.
unless there's injury news or Duffy doesn't make a team, etc.
Right. So, I mean, pretty easy. That's the halves. Guys, let us know if you are jumping on a pod in the halves. If you are, I think it's a big opportunity this year because it could go off. But for us, straightforward. Cheers for jumping on, Biz.
Thank you.